The great hall of the Axiom Eternal was filled with beings from 100 different worlds. They had come for peace. They had come to sign treaties and shake hands and promise that the wars of the past would stay in the past. The flagship of the Galactic Core Confederation was the largest ship ever built. And today it carried the hopes of 1,000 civilizations. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the back of the hall, trying not to feel small. She was the medical officer attached to the human delegation, and humanity was the newest species in the Confederation. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. Compared to species that had sailed between stars for 10,000 years, humans were babies taking their first steps. Elena watched the Crown Prince of the Sithrani Empire walk to the speaking platform. Prince Velketh was beautiful in the way that crystals are beautiful. His body was made of living mineral, and light moved through him like water through glass. The Sithrani were silicon-based life forms, completely different from carbon-based species like humans. Their bodies were a lattice of crystal and energy, and they could live for thousands of years. The prince began his speech about unity and cooperation. His voice rang like bells across the hall. Elena did not understand most of the political details, but she understood that this moment was important. The Sithrani Empire and the Core Confederation had been rivals for centuries. This treaty would change everything. Then the prince stopped speaking. His hand went to his chest. The light inside him flickered. Elena saw it before anyone else did, because she was a doctor, and she was trained to notice when something was wrong with a body. She pushed forward through the crowd, even as Prince Velketh fell to his knees. By the time she reached the front, the Sithrani guards had formed a wall around their prince. Elena could see through the gaps between them. The prince was on the ground now. His crystalline blood was pooling beneath him, and it was wrong. It was black instead of silver. It looked like ink spreading across white marble. Sithrani physicians appeared from somewhere, carrying equipment that Elena did not recognize. They moved with calm efficiency, but Elena could see the fear in their strange faceted eyes. They scanned the prince with devices that hummed and clicked. They spoke to each other in their own language, and their voices were sharp with worry. The crowd was pushing back now. Security forces from a dozen species were trying to maintain order. Elena found herself standing near the human ambassador, a man named Chun, who looked as confused and frightened as everyone else. Then Admiral Thiessen Vio took control. The Admiral was Ildrati, a species known for their military discipline and their long lives. His skin was like polished black stone, and his eyes glowed with a soft orange light. He had commanded the Confederation fleet for 300 years, and when he raised his hand for silence, the entire hall obeyed. "The Crown Prince has been poisoned," the Admiral announced. His voice carried easily across the great hall. "Our physicians have identified the agent as nethrosite corruption. This is a rare and extremely deadly toxin that attacks silicon-based life forms at the quantum level." Elena pulled up information on her personal tablet. She had studied xenobiology extensively, but nethrosite was not something she had encountered before. The data she found was not encouraging. The corruption worked by breaking down the bonds that held Sithrani cellular structures together. It essentially made their bodies forget how to exist. There was no known cure. "The corruption is irreversible," Admiral Vio continued. "No medical science in the Confederation can stop it. The prince has perhaps 6 hours to live." A holographic display flickered to life near the speaking platform. It showed the face of the Sithrani Emperor, watching from his throne world many light years away. The old emperor said nothing. His silence was heavier than any words could have been. He was watching his son die, and there was nothing he could do about it. "We will make the prince comfortable," the Admiral said. "We will find who did this. But I must be clear with everyone here. No one can save him. Elena felt something twist in her chest. She was a doctor. She had spent her entire adult life fighting death. She had lost patients before, and she had accepted those losses because sometimes death won despite everything. But she had never accepted a loss before the fight even started. She looked at the medical display that the Sithrani physicians had left visible. She looked at the readings, at the way the corruption was spreading through the prince's body. Something caught her attention. Something the other physicians had not mentioned. The corruption was fast, but it was not uniform. There were places in the prince's body where it moved more slowly. The pattern suggested that the prince's own immune system was fighting back. It was losing, but it was fighting. If his immune system could slow the corruption even a little, then maybe it could be helped. Maybe something could be done to give it strength. Maybe the battle was not as hopeless as everyone believed. Elena pushed through the crowd again. This time, she pushed toward the Admiral. Security officers moved to stop her, but she called out before they could. "Admiral Vale, I would like to examine the prince." The hall went quiet. Every eye turned to look at the small human woman who had spoken. Elena felt the weight of their attention like a physical force, but she did not back down. The Admiral looked at her. His expression did not change, but something flickered in those orange eyes. It might have been curiosity. It might have been pity. "Dr. Vasquez, is it?" he said. "You are the medical officer for the human delegation." "Yes, sir. Your species still uses chemical anesthesia. You still cut open bodies with metal tools. The Sithrani physiology operates on principles that your science will not understand for another 1,000 years." Elena heard soft laughter from around the hall. It was polite laughter, the kind that people used when they did not want to be openly cruel. But it was still laughter, and it was directed at her. She did not care. "Then you have nothing to lose by letting me try," she said. "If no one can save him anyway, what harm could I possibly do?" The Admiral studied her for a long moment. Elena held his gaze and did not look away. She was afraid, and she was out of her depth, and she knew that she was probably going to fail. But she was also a doctor, and somewhere in this room a young man was dying, and she could not just stand by and watch. "Very well," the Admiral said finally. "You may examine the prince. I do not expect you to succeed, Doctor, but I have learned never to underestimate the stubbornness of humans." Elena nodded and walked toward the medical area where the prince lay dying. She did not know if she could save him. She did not know if anything she tried would make any difference at all. But she was going to try anyway, because that was what doctors did. That was what humans did. They tried. The medical bay of the Axiom Eternal was like nothing Elena had ever seen. The walls glowed with soft light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Medical equipment floated in the air, held in place by invisible forces. Everything was clean and white and perfect, like a temple built for the worship of healing. Prince Velkith lay on a suspension field in the center of the room. He was not touching anything solid. He simply floated there, held by technology that humans had not even begun to understand. The darkness in his body had spread since the Great Hall. Black lines ran through his crystalline form like cracks in ice. The Sithrani physicians stood at a distance, watching Elena with expressions she could not read. They had done everything they could. Their equipment had already declared the prince dead. They were simply waiting for his body to catch up with the diagnosis. Elena ignored them. She walked to the edge of the suspension field and looked down at the dying prince. Up close, she could see the light still moving inside him, dimmer now, but still fighting. He was alive. He was still fighting. That meant there was still a chance. She pulled out her personal tablet and connected it to the medical displays. The Confederation technology was far beyond anything Earth had produced. The data was data. Numbers were numbers. Elena could read the information, even if she did not fully understand the machines that produced it. The nethrosite corruption was elegant in its cruelty. It attacked the quantum bonds that held Sithrani cells together. It did not kill the cells directly. Instead, it made them forget their own structure. The cells fell apart because they no longer knew how to hold themselves together. It was like erasing the blueprints of a building while someone was still living inside. The Confederation physicians had tried to fight the corruption directly. They had created medicines designed to neutralize the nethrosite. But the corruption adapted. It changed faster than any treatment could keep up with. Every solution they found, it found a way around. Elena saw the problem differently. She was not thinking about how to destroy the nethrosite. She was thinking about how to keep the prince alive long enough for his own body to figure out the answer. The human approach to medicine had always been different from other species. Humans did not try to achieve perfect cures. They tried to buy time. They supported the body and let the body do the healing. "I need access to your bioforge," Elena said to the lead Sithrani physician. The physician's name was Crystal Moth, and she had been treating members of the royal family for 2,000 years. She looked at Elena the way a master painter might look at a child holding a crayon. "For what purpose?" Moth asked. "I want to build something. A temporary immune system for the prince." "That is impossible. The prince already has an immune system. It is failing because the corruption is too strong." "I know. I want to give him a second one. A backup. Something that can fight the corruption while his own system recovers." Moth's crystalline features shifted in what Elena recognized as contempt. Human cellular structures are carbon-based. They would be rejected instantly by a Sithrani body. Even if they could somehow interface with silicon biology, which they cannot, they would do more harm than good. "I am not planning to transplant human cells," Elena said. "I want to transplant human stubbornness." The other physicians in the room exchanged glances. Elena knew they thought she was crazy. She probably was crazy, but she was also right, and she needed them to understand why. "Human immune systems are different from other species," she explained. "By galactic standards, they are considered primitive, aggressive, almost dangerous. Where most species have immune systems that seek balance, human immune systems seek victory. They do not just fight infections. They hold grudges. They remember enemies for decades. They launch attacks that sometimes damage the host as much as the invader." "That sounds like a flaw," Moth said. "It is a flaw. It causes all kinds of problems for us. Allergies, autoimmune diseases, inflammation that will not stop even when the threat is gone." Elena met Moth's eyes. "But it also means that human immune responses never give up. They fight until they win or until the body dies. There is no surrender. There is no retreat." She pulled up a diagram on her tablet and projected it for the other physicians to see. "I want to create a hybrid construct. Something that uses human immunological aggression but can interface with silicon biology. It will not cure the prince. It cannot stop the nethrosite, but it can fight the corruption. It can slow it down. It can buy time." "How much time?" Moth asked. "I do not know. Hours, maybe. Maybe more if we are lucky. And what happens when this construct burns out? Then we are back where we started. The prince dies. But at least we tried something. At least we gave him a chance." Moth was silent for a long moment. The other physicians waited for her decision. Finally, she stepped aside and gestured toward a machine that pulsed with soft blue light. "The bioforge is yours, human. I do not believe you will succeed. But I have watched my patient die slowly for the past hour, and I find that I am tired of watching. Do what you will." Elena walked to the bioforge and began to work. The next 3 hours were the hardest of her life. She was building something that had never been built before. using technology she barely understood for a species whose biology was completely different from her own. Every step required her to learn something new. Every solution created new problems that needed new solutions. She built what she called a spike graft. It was not a cure. It was not even a treatment in the traditional sense. It was a weapon designed to fight the Nethrosite with the same mindless aggression that human immune systems used against every threat they encountered. The graft would not last long. It would burn through itself in a matter of hours, destroying itself as it destroyed the enemy. But while it lasted, it would fight. It would hold the line. It would give the prince's body time to learn and adapt. When the construct was finally complete, Elena held it in her hands and looked at it. It was small and ugly and desperate. It was everything that human medicine was supposed to have evolved beyond. It was primitive and brutal and completely unscientific. It was also the prince's only chance. Elena looked at Moth. "I am ready." "Then do it," the Sithrani physician said, "before someone stops you." Elena walked to the suspension field where Prince Velkith floated in his slow death. She took a deep breath. She thought about all the people who had told her that humans did not belong among the stars. She thought about all the species who looked down on humanity as primitive children who had stumbled into a galaxy they did not understand. Then she administered the spike graft and began to fight. The door to the medical bay opened 3 minutes after Elena administered the spike graft. Admiral HFY War walked in, followed by 4 security officers in full combat armor. His orange eyes swept across the room and found Elena standing beside the prince's suspension field. "Dr. Vasquez," the Admiral said. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "I have been informed that you performed the medical procedure without authorization." Elena did not step away from the prince. "Yes, the Sithrani Emperor specifically refused consent for experimental treatments." "I know. You have violated Confederation medical law. You have potentially endangered the life of a member of a royal family. You have created a diplomatic incident that could take years to resolve." The Admiral paused. "Do you understand the seriousness of what you have done?" "I understand that the prince was dying," Elena said. "I understand that no one else was going to help him. I understand that I might have just made everything worse." She met the Admiral's gaze without flinching. "But I also understand that doing nothing was not an option. Not for me. You could face imprisonment. Your species could face sanctions. Everything humanity has worked for in the Confederation could be destroyed because of your actions tonight." Elena felt the weight of those words. She knew the Admiral was right. She had not just risked her own career. She had risked her planet's entire future. Every human who came after her would have to deal with the consequences of what she had done. "I know," she said quietly. "But I'm a doctor, Admiral. I took an oath to help the sick and the dying. I cannot just watch someone die when I might be able to save them. That is not who I am. That is not who humans are." The Admiral studied her for a long moment. Then he looked at the displays showing the prince's vital signs. Something changed in his expression. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but Elena saw it. "What is happening to him?" the Admiral asked. Elena turned to look at the displays. Inside the prince's body, a war had begun. The spike graft was doing exactly what she had designed it to do. Billions of tiny constructs were throwing themselves at the Nethrosite corruption with mindless fury. They were dying by the millions every second, but they were also killing the corruption. They were slowing it down. "The graft is fighting," Elena said. "It is not winning, but it is not losing either. Right now, it is holding the line. For how long? I do not know. A few hours, maybe. The constructs are burning through themselves very quickly. When they are gone, the corruption will start spreading again." The Admiral was silent. Crystal Moth stepped forward and began explaining the technical details of what Elena had created. Her voice was different now. The contempt was gone, replaced by something that might have been professional respect. Ambassador Chun arrived a few minutes later. He looked exhausted and worried. He found Elena still standing beside the prince's suspension field, watching the displays like a hawk. "Elena, what have you done?" he asked quietly. "I tried to save him. The Admiral is talking about arresting you. The Sithrani delegation is demanding your head. Half the Confederation thinks you just committed an act of war. And the other half?" Chung was quiet for a moment. "The other half is watching those displays and wondering if you might actually succeed." The next few hours were a nightmare. Elena did not eat. She did not sleep. She barely sat down. She watched the displays constantly, monitoring the battle inside the prince's body and making adjustments to the spycraft whenever she could. The war inside the prince was brutal and ugly. The spycraft attacked the corruption with savage intensity. It did not care about collateral damage. It did not care about efficiency. It only cared about killing the enemy. Human immune systems had evolved in a world full of dangers where the price of restraint was death. That brutal history was encoded in every construct Elena had created. The corruption fought back. It adapted and evolved, trying to find ways around the graft's attacks. But the graft adapted too. It learned from every failure and tried new approaches. It was stupid and wasteful and destructive, but it was also relentless. It refused to give up. At hour 3, the corruption stopped spreading. It did not retreat, but it stopped advancing. The spycraft had created a stalemate. At hour 4, the prince's vital signs crashed. His body was struggling to handle the conflict inside it. Elena made rapid adjustments, dialing back the graft's aggression slightly to reduce the strain on his systems. It was a risk. If she reduced the pressure too much, the corruption would start spreading again. The prince stabilized, barely. At hour 5, something unexpected happened. The prince's own immune system began to change. It was watching the spycraft fight, and it was learning. The Sithrani body was adapting, copying the human approach to combat. It was becoming more aggressive, more persistent, more willing to accept damage in exchange for victory. Elena stared at the displays in disbelief. She had hoped to buy time. She had never expected the prince's body to actually learn from her crude, primitive graft. But it was learning. It was adapting. It was becoming something new. "What is happening?" Moth asked. The Sithrani physician was standing beside Elena now, watching the same displays. "His immune system is copying the graft," Elena said. "It is learning how to fight like a human." "Is that good?" "I think so. I hope so." Elena shook her head. "I honestly do not know. This has never happened before. No one has ever tried this before." At hour 6, the deadline that Admiral Via had announced passed. The prince should have been dead by now. Instead, he was still fighting. The corruption was still present, but it was no longer spreading. The stalemate held. Elena finally allowed herself to sit down. Her legs were shaking. Her hands were trembling. She had been running on adrenaline and fear for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to be tired. Ambassador Chun sat down beside her. "You did it," he said quietly. "Not yet." Elena watched the displays. "The graft is almost gone. When it burns out, everything depends on whether his own immune system has learned enough to keep fighting." "What are the chances?" Elena was quiet for a long moment. "I do not know. Maybe 50%, maybe less. That is better than 0. "Yes." Elena closed her eyes. "That is better than 0. She did not sleep. She could not sleep. Somewhere, in that suspension field, a young man's body was fighting the hardest battle of its existence. Elena had given him a weapon, but the fight was his now. All she could do was watch and wait and hoped that it was enough. The long night continued. The spike graph died at hour 9. Elena watched it happen on the displays. The tiny constructs she had built burned through their last reserves of energy and went dark, one by one, like stars winking out at the end of the universe. They had fought for 9 hours straight, never stopping, never surrendering, never accepting defeat. They had done everything she had asked them to do. Now the prince was alone. Elena held her breath. Everyone in the medical bay held their breath. The displays showed the corruption sitting inside the prince's body, held at bay but not destroyed. For a long moment, nothing happened. The corruption seemed to be waiting, gathering its strength for a final push. Then the prince's own immune system attacked. It struck the corruption with the same savage intensity that the spike graft had used. It hit hard and fast and without any concern for the damage it might cause. It fought like something cornered and desperate, like something that had learned that the only way to survive was to be more vicious than the enemy. It fought like a human. Elena felt tears running down her face. She did not bother to wipe them away. She just watched as the prince's body launched its final desperate attack on the corruption that was trying to kill him. The battle lasted for hours. It was not clean or elegant. It was brutal and ugly and destructive. The prince's vital signs crashed 3 more times. Each time, Elena thought she had lost him. Each time, his body pulled itself back from the edge and kept fighting. At hour 14, the corruption began to retreat. It was slow at first. The black lines in the prince's crystalline body started to fade at the edges. The darkness pulled back from his extremities, concentrating in his core as if making a last stand. The prince's immune system pursued it relentlessly, never giving it a moment to rest or recover. At hour 18, the last traces of corruption disappeared from the displays. The medical bay erupted in chaos. Sithirani physicians rushed to confirm the readings. Confederation officials demanded explanations. Admiral Vire stood in the corner with his arms crossed, watching everything with those glowing orange eyes. Elena just sat in her chair and cried. She cried because she was exhausted. She cried because she had been terrified for 18 hours straight. She cried because she had done something impossible, and she still did not quite believe it had worked. She cried because she was a doctor, and saving lives was supposed to make her happy. And right now she was so tired that she could not feel anything except relief. Crystal Moth approached her. The Sithirani physician stood awkwardly for a moment, as if she did not know what to say. "You saved him," Moth said finally. "I did not think it was possible. I thought you were a fool for trying. But you saved him." "He saved himself," Elena said. "I just showed him how." "That is not entirely true. You gave him a weapon when everyone else had given up. You fought for him when no one else would. That matters." Elena looked up at the older physician. "I broke every rule. I acted without consent. I could have made everything worse. Yes, you could have." Moth paused. "But you did not. And now my prince is alive because a human doctor refused to accept that death was inevitable." She turned and walked away before Elena could respond. The prince woke up on the 3rd day. Elena was still in the medical bay. She had not left except to use the bathroom and change her clothes. Ambassador Chun had tried to convince her to rest, but she had refused. She needed to see this through. She needed to know that it was really over. When Prince Velkith opened his eyes, Elena was the first thing he saw. She was slumped in a chair beside his suspension field, her tablet still in her lap, dark circles under her eyes. She looked terrible. She felt worse. The prince tried to speak. His voice was weak and rough, like crystal grinding against crystal. "Who are you?" he asked. "My name is Elena Vasquez. I am a doctor. You saved me." Elena shook her head. Your body saved you. I just helped." The prince was quiet for a moment. He seemed to be processing this information. "I was told that I was going to die. I was told that no one could save me." Yes, that is what everyone believed, but you did not believe it. Elena thought about the question. Had she believed it? Had she really thought she could succeed when everyone else had given up? The truth was complicated. She had not known if she could save him. She had not even thought it was likely. But she had tried anyway, because trying was better than accepting defeat. "I believed that giving up was not an option," she said finally. "I believed that we had to try, even if we failed. I believed that was better than doing nothing." The prince studied her face. His eyes were like jewels, faceted and deep, and Elena could not read the expression in them. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for not giving up." Elena felt fresh tears threatening to fall. She blinked them back and tried to smile. "You are welcome. Now rest. Your body has been through a lot." The prince closed his eyes. Within minutes, he was asleep again. His vital signs were stable. His immune system was calm. The corruption was gone, and it was not coming back. Elena finally let herself relax. She leaned back in her chair and closed her own eyes. For the first time in 3 days, she let herself believe that everything was going to be okay. She fell asleep sitting there, still holding her tablet, still watching over her patient. The Sithrani physicians let her rest. They had spent 3 days watching this strange human woman fight for their prince's life. They had watched her refuse to give up when all hope seemed lost. They had watched her succeed when success seemed impossible. The least they could do was let her sleep. The ceremony was held in the great hall of the Axiom Eternal, the same room where Prince Velkith had collapsed 1 week earlier. The bloodstains had been cleaned away. The chaos had been replaced with order. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to witness something that had never happened before. A human was about to receive the crystalline heart. Elena stood at the front of the hall in borrowed formal clothes that did not quite fit. She had tried to refuse the ceremony. She had told Ambassador Chun that she did not want the attention, that she had only done her job, that she did not deserve to be celebrated for doing what any doctor should do. Chun had smiled and told her that refusing was not an option. "You did something impossible," he had said. "The galaxy needs to see that. Humanity needs the galaxy to see that." So here she was, standing in front of thousands of beings from hundreds of species, waiting for an emperor to hang a medal around her neck. She had never felt more uncomfortable in her entire life. The Sithrani emperor arrived through a portal of light. He was ancient, his crystalline body worn smooth by countless years of existence. But his eyes were sharp and clear, and they found Elena immediately. "Dr. Elena Vasquez," the emperor said. His voice carried across the great hall without any need for amplification. "Please step forward." Elena walked to the center of the hall. Her legs felt weak. Her heart was pounding. She told herself that she had faced worse than this. She had fought death itself and won. Surely she could survive a simple ceremony. The emperor studied her for a long moment. Then he began to speak. "When my son fell ill, I was told that nothing could be done. I was told that the finest medical minds in the Confederation had examined him and found no hope. I was told to prepare for his death." The hall was silent. Every being present was listening with absolute attention. Then I was told that a human doctor wanted to try something. A human. A member of a species that has only been sailing between the stars for 40 years. A species that still uses chemical medicine and metal surgical tools. I was told that this human believed she could save my son when the greatest physicians in the galaxy had given up. The emperor paused. I refused her request. I did not want my son's final hours to be spent as an experiment. I did not believe that a human could succeed where so many others had failed. I thought her offer was foolish at best, dangerous at worst. Elena felt her face grow hot. She had never been officially told that the Emperor had refused consent. Now she was learning it in front of the entire galaxy. Dr. Vasquez ignored my refusal, the Emperor continued. She performed her procedure anyway. She violated my explicit orders and the laws of the Confederation. She risked her career, her freedom, and the reputation of her entire species. He paused again. And she saved my son's life. The Emperor reached into the folds of his robes and withdrew something that glowed with inner light. It was a crystal shaped like a stylized heart, and it pulsed with colors that seemed to shift and dance. The crystalline heart, the highest honor the Sithrani Empire could give. We believed we knew what humans were, the Emperor said. A young species, primitive, aggressive. We tolerated them because they seemed harmless. Too small to matter. Too new to understand the galaxy they had stumbled into. He looked directly at Elena. We were wrong. Humans are not harmless. They are relentless. When the Confederation's finest said nothing could be done, this woman refused to accept it. She did not bow to superior knowledge or ancient wisdom. She did not defer to those who knew more than her. She rolled up her sleeves and went to work. The Emperor stepped forward and placed the metal around Elena's neck. The crystal was warm against her skin, and she could feel it pulsing gently, like a living thing. The galaxy has many species who are stronger than humans, the Emperor said. Smarter, more advanced, more experienced. But I have never encountered a species so stubborn. You do not know when you are beaten. You do not understand when something is impossible. You fight when fighting is pointless. You hope when hope is foolish. You try when trying seems absurd. He stepped back and looked at her with something like wonder in his ancient eyes. Perhaps that is why you so often succeed. The hall erupted in applause. Elena stood there, feeling the weight of the metal against her chest, listening to thousands of beings cheer for her. She did not know what to say. She did not know what to feel. She had just been called stubborn and foolish and primitive by an emperor, and somehow those words had sounded like the highest praise she had ever received. Later, after the ceremony was over and the crowds had dispersed, Elena found herself standing at a viewport, watching the stars. Prince Velkith found her there. He was still weak, still recovering, but he insisted on walking without assistance. Dr. Vasquez, he said, I wanted to thank you again. You do not need to keep thanking me, Elena said. I was just doing my job. No, you were doing more than that. The prince came to stand beside her at the viewport. You were showing the galaxy who humans really are. Elena was quiet for a moment. And who are we, exactly? You are the species that does not give up. You are the ones who fight when fighting is hopeless. You are the ones who look at the impossible and say, let me try anyway. The prince smiled, and his crystalline face lit up from within. My father was right. The galaxy has no idea what humans are capable of, but they are starting to learn. Elena looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow sun. Her home, her people, a species that had clawed its way up from nothing, survived ice ages and plagues and wars, and finally reached the stars. They were young. They were primitive. They did not have the knowledge or the technology or the experience of the older species. But they had something else. Something that could not be measured or quantified or understood. They had stubbornness. They had hope. They had the absolute refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat seemed certain. The galaxy has no idea what is coming, Elena said softly. The prince looked at her curiously. Is that a threat? Elena smiled. No, it is a promise. She turned away from the viewport and began walking back toward the medical bay. There was still work to do. There were always more patients to help, more problems to solve, more impossible situations that needed someone stubborn enough to try. That was what humans did. That was what Elena did. They tried. They fought. They refused to give up. And sometimes, against all odds, they won.